we go now.
If you are ready to live a life of abundance, if you are ready to best your best, then come to the edge. Because if you are not living your life on the edge, you are taking up far too much room.
Here we go now.
Welcome to The Edge. I'm your host, Eric Brown, and in studio today, I have Mr. Mike Jones, the president of Discover Leadership Training.
Hey man, so glad to be back. I'm so grateful for those of y'all that have subscribed to our podcast and left those incredible comments. So glad to know that you're benefiting from this content. Man, we're going to keep doing our best to best our best to continue to offer useful information that is going to allow you to do just what that church says, create an even better version of yourself. And I like to say this out loud, y'all. We have been doing this for over 30 years, and we have seen thousands of people benefit from this information. We are doing this podcast because we know that all of y'all will never attend our classes. However, this is our way, our opportunity to bring the class to you, to give you an opportunity to truly start connecting to this smoking hot shit.
Yeah, for sure. And during the last podcast, we introduced this book, Change Your Mind, Change Your World, which you can find at discoverleadership.com at our On Purpose apparel store. And I got to tell you, Mike, as I read this book, chapter 3 about the flag or the win was definitely my favorite chapter.
Yeah, man, it is so important. Man, I hear so many people saying, you know what, Mike, chapter 3 was my favorite chapter. So let's talk about chapter 3 of Change Your Mind, Change Your World. It talks about the flag or the win. And it is asking a question in chapter 3. Are you the flag or are you the win? Now, think about this for a second. The attributes of the flag, it is passive. It's waiting for direction. It moves in the direction of the biggest energy. So put yourself in that perspective. Are you an individual that is passive, that allows the circumstances around you or the people around you to push you into whatever direction that they are pushing you in, and you absolutely are being blown all over the place? One of the things that I love to say to people, y'all, and I'm going to say to you today, if you don't stand for something, you may fall for anything. So if you are the flag, quite frankly, it's likely because you have not took a stand focused on a specific direction that you are committed to take your life in. When you are the win, you get the opportunity to make the decision of what direction you're going to go in today. Whatever your outcome is going to determine what the appropriate direction is. So let me say that again, because it's going to be so important that you connect to this. When I set an outcome, I identify where I'm going. When I know where I'm going, then I know what it is going to take for me to get there. Now, me saying to you in this present moment that you should be the win does not mean that you need to run people over or blow people down, because a hurricane force wind is a damaging wind. So that is not the kind of win that we are encouraging you to become.
So, Mike, I got to ask this question, though. If I'm working with a colleague or a coworker and I'm looking for them to kind of step up, wouldn't it be okay for me to be the flag and let them be the win?
Yeah. And that sounds logical, y'all. That sounds logical. However, I am going to say no. The reason that I'm saying no is because I always want to bring you back to the attributes of the flag. The flag is passive. It is waiting for direction. In so many cases, the flag becomes the victim. It is waiting for the direction or permission from somebody else to go in a certain direction. Now, I understand that some of y'all were raised in such a way that you are a servant leader. And I got that. This does not submit that you should not be a servant leader. This submits that you should always be the win. So let's just talk about why. When you are the win and you know what your outcome is, like the situation that Eric just posed, you have a person in your life, your significant other, a coworker, a friend, who's generally an introvert. They're generally kind of the passive person. They are somebody who is the win. I would encourage you not to step down to allow the illusion of them stepping up. Let me say that again. I would not encourage you to take a step back for the illusion that they took a step forward, because they are not benefiting from that, and neither will you. Let me tell you a quick story. I am someone who loves to run, and I've run several marathons in my life. I had an opportunity for an individual who requested to run with me. Generally, I run by myself. Generally, it's at 4 o'clock in the morning because it gets really hot here in Houston, Texas. I made the choice in that situation to be the flag. I took a step back. I ran slower for a long period of time, giving this individual an opportunity to feel like she was really accomplishing something. When it came time for me to compete in the marathon, I did not have the stamina. I did not have the ability to run at my normal pace because I stepped back, stepped to the side, and allowed somebody else to now create a situation for me that I now had not been practicing the way that I needed to practice in order to deliver. Now, it would have been a much different situation if I kept running strong, which means that I would have stayed strong or got stronger, and this person would have got stronger. But the illusion that she was doing something that she really was not doing was what I created. I'm saying to you that that is not benefiting you and it's not benefiting the other person.
So, Mike, in my master grad class, there's a lot of deep dive into behavioral quadrants, specifically the Disc Quadrant. Walk us through, how does that apply to the flag or the win?
Eric, I'm so glad you asked the question that way. DISC is a very complicated process, and there's no way that I'm going to be able to debrief that whole thing during this podcast. But I want to give you enough of a laymanistic understanding of it so you'll know in the context of this conversation about the flag or the win, how it relates and how you fit into the relationship about this conversation. So with this, there are 4 different quadrants. These quadrants are comfort zones. They are personality styles. And in those 4 different quadrants, they use an alphabet: D in one, the I, the S, and the C, which means disc. So let's talk about the D's really quickly. If you are in the D quadrant, it's because you're a very direct individual. You are extroverted. You are someone who loves challenges. You're fast-paced and you're very task-oriented. You are a bottom line kind of person. You get the job done. So that's the D quadrant. So moving really quickly over to the I quadrant. What the D and the I have in common is that they're both fast-paced. What they don't have in common is the I, which stands for influencing. They love to work with people. They are the people. They're generally very enthusiastic. They can be anybody's best friend. That's you, isn't it? Be anybody's best friend. They are individuals who love to be loved. They want everybody to like them. And They never say no to anything or anybody. So sometimes they get a little overwhelmed with the things that they have going on. So that's the I quadrant. And then the next quadrant we'll refer to as the S quadrant. The S stands for steady. Now, where the D's have a motto, if it ain't broke, break it. The S's have a motto, if it ain't broke, leave it alone. They don't like a lot of change going on. They're a slow pace. They're generally very introverted individuals. However, they love people as well. They will shave their heads and go to battle for you if there's a trusting environment or trust in the relationship. They generally take better care of other people than they do themselves. And that is the S quadrant. Now, the last one we want to talk about is what we refer to as the C quadrant. It stands for conscientious. C's are those individuals that are very analytical, they're very factual driven, they're very critical, they love data. If you want to make a high C personality really happy, you need to give them some data that supports the data, that supports the data. And many times what I find with C's is they're quite perfectionistic as well. Now, those are the four quadrants at a glance, and you fit within one of them in the way that you behave naturally in your relationships based upon how you were taught and the behaviors that you've been practicing over and over and over again. Whichever one of those quadrants you find yourself in, you got to know this today. It is not a hardwire. You did not come into the world predisposed to be that person. You practice those behaviors over and over and over and over again, and you mastered them. It is important that you can recognize that it is not a hardwire, that it is a behavior. It is a comfort zone. These are the behaviors that you've become comfortable with. So that's the quadrant that you occupy most of the time. I say most of the time because I hope that that's your truth. Because if you're occupying that space all the time, then you're going to be out of control. Because there are never going to be a situation where that quadrant is going to be the answer to everything that is going on in your life. And I promise we're going to talk more about that in another podcast. In the context of the flag or the win, you always, and I do mean always, want to be the win. The reason that you always want to be the win is it allows you to be able to be malleable, flexible. It allows you to make adjustments necessary in order for you to continue to move forward. You know that all four of those quadrants are available to you, and you can move from quadrant to quadrant based upon the outcome, based upon what is needed from you in that moment to keep moving forward. If you get stuck in any one of those quadrants, you have got to recognize that when you overuse your strength, and yes, your comfort zone in the context of this conversation is where your strength lies. If you overuse that strength, it then becomes a weakness because it's not going to move you forward. It's not going to allow you to be the win, or not a healthy win, but it's going to now create something adverse to whatever you say your outcome is. So what I'm saying to you, if you know what your outcome is, then the outcome identifies where you're going. And if you know where you're going, then you can always, I said always, be the win. Because if the outcome requires you to be a strong, bold, forceful win, you can occupy the D quadrant. If the outcome requires you to be a celebratory, enthusiastic, fun win, then you can identify with the I quadrant and occupy that quadrant. If the outcome requires you to be a gentle, calm, patient win, then you can occupy the S quadrant. If the outcome requires you to be a contemplative win, then you can occupy the C quadrant. But when you truly become the game changer, then you now know that not any one of those quadrants is your home, but that they are all available to you when you truly become the win.
So that is some smoking hot shit there. And you said game changer. So
Yes, sir.
When you mean, what do you mean by game changer?
Well, if you occupy one of those quadrants all the time, you have a predictable future because you are on that well-worn path, and we know how you're going to react to things based upon living in that quadrant. But when you are a game changer, you are not stuck in that quadrant where you have a predictable future. The game changer is altering that predictable future in a positive way by occupying the space that is necessary to bring the most value to the relationship that they possibly can.
Got it. So what you're submitting is that it is never, and this is one of the times that it's absolutely
never
okay to be the flag.
Never okay to be the flag.
Because as the wind, you can adjust to what's needed to get to the outcome, but as the flag, you're there at someone else's mercy.
Absolutely. And I have to say this out loud because I know some of y'all were raised in the church as I was. That sounds like it may mean be selfish. In the context of this conversation, this is not a conversation about being selfish. It's about understanding that I can bring more value to the relationship when I am the win. When I am the flag, at some point, I am going to do damage or have damage done to me in the context of this conversation. And that is when it's never going to feel good. You're never going to produce a positive result when that is how you are choosing to be in the context of this conversation.
Wow. Mike, thanks for dropping some smoking hot shit. We got more coming for these listeners.
Absolutely.
Every single Wednesday night at 8 p.m. Central. Join us.
So come to the edge. Because you know this by now, when you get out on that edge, yeah, it's scary. You get some sweaty palms, your heart starts racing, you may feel a little anxious, but you get them butterflies, invite them to stick around. Because if you are not living your life on the edge, you're taking up far too much.
Here we go.